Okay, everyone. We continue in My Generation by Rav Kook Meimor HaDor. And what we've been learning about is the way light works through vessels, the way vessels break when a new light enters them. And what Rav Kook has been describing is the great pain, this great emotional collapse, right? He's been describing the pain of the generation, the trauma, humiliation, the generational fragmentation, right? The intergenerational trauma, the anger, despair, loss of speech, loss of dignity, and loss of hope. It's like a kina, you know? And there's so much just we could learn from this right away, which is when someone's in pain and someone's suffering, you don't try to move them off it so quickly. You sit with them in their pain. When your kid is struggling, when you're struggling, your spouse is struggling, it's not, it's so easy to go into fix-it mode. Let's fix it, let's do this. Okay, what do we do, right? And Rav Kook has already spent the first bunch of paragraphs of this mimer just talking about pain and reflecting his pain. It's like we all know the story of the turkey prince of Rabbi Nachman, right? There was a prince who thought he was a turkey and he got naked under the table, and all the healers tried helping him, and no one was successful until one healer took off all his clothes and was there with him, or he pretended like he was a turkey. Sorry, the healer didn't take off his clothes, but he thought he was a turkey, and he went down. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a turkey. I'm a turkey." And the healer, the tzaddik, was there in the pain of the individual. And Rav Kook, what he's doing in the face of all the trauma, the humiliation, the inability to express oneself, Rav Kook is just sitting in that pain. He's just there. It's like our children are in pain, or we're in pain, or someone that we love is in pain, and say, but you could just, but if what you could, right? So that's what you don't want to do, right? The first thing is you want to sit in the pain, anochi mo b'tzara. You want to just be there with the individual. And that's really the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? Sympathy is, I told you so, and empathy is, I'm with you. We're fellow travelers on this journey. And so Irvin Yalom writes this at length, talking about being fellow travelers, as therapists, but he also, I think it applies to parenting, to seeing our role as journeyers with our kids, as fellow travelers, not necessarily this top-down type of thing, And again, with all the pain and with all the trauma that Rav Kook is acknowledging, he's living in, he's discussing, right? He's going to show us also how to get out of that trauma, right? So over here in the mimer, already what happens is we're going to see. One second. People are going in. Okay, sorry. A lot of noise coming in from the other side of the base. So Rav Kook is showing us again, he's going to show us to how to move on from our trauma, not just how to live in the trauma, but how to move on from the trauma. And of course, all this is happening as we get closer to Geula. The light becomes stronger, and new neshamas need to come down in order to contain that light. New paradigms need to come down in order to contain that light. So here we are. If everyone could, it's on the first page over there. Second paragraph up from the bottom. Second paragraph, it says, Hasu rayanai, be still my thoughts, quiet my thinking, right? Now this is remarkable, right? That we see how Rav Kook is not dismissing the pain. He's not dismissing the pain. He's not saying, everything's okay, it's going to be all good. But what he does is, when a person has trauma, what did he do? Hasu rayanai. He's showing inner leadership. Quiet my thoughts. Thoughts, be still, right? But it's not even just thoughts be still, because like we all know, when we have a racing mind and our mind's flooded and we descend into survival mode, just telling yourself it will be better is not the answer. You can't just quiet your thoughts, right? Which is why Rav Kook spends a whole bunch of paragraphs intro acknowledging the pain. Because once we acknowledge the pain and we can face that pain, then our minds can start to quiet. Then our minds, we're able to create that inner space within us to gain space from our thinking, from our consciousness, from our pain, in order to contain that thing. So we don't want a shviras hakelim, we want a harchavas hakelim, to broaden the emotional palette, to broaden the emotional space in order to deal with the trauma of the generation and to deal with the individual trauma. So in order to move someone off trauma, in order to deal with our own things, Rav Kook shows inner leadership now. It's just amazing how he does this, you know? He spends a whole bunch of paragraphs talking about pain, right? And he's like, Hasu Rainai, quiet my thoughts. Because when you face that pain, you're able to create that inner space in order for your mind to begin to settle and start having inner leadership, having that inner voice come down in order to now lead yourself as opposed to sending into survival mode. So he says, Hasul Ra'inoi, be still, quiet my thoughts. It's like his well-being is shouting out from the pain after acknowledging it. Al tishtachachu va'al tehemu. Do not bow, do not submit yourself va'al tehemu, and do not be astounded. Don't descend into like tahoms, like don't descend into chaos. Yesh shemesh shedaka zoreach. Right? Af tavia marpe kanfeh. I know he plays with this pasuk over here. This is a pasuk in a pasuk in Malachi, where it talks about at the end of days there's going to be this healing sun, and this healing sun the rays of the sun is going to now punish the wicked, but also heal the tzaddikim. So he says, Yesh shemesh tzedakah zorachas. There is a shemesh of tzedakah, a shemesh, a sun of tzedakah, of righteousness, zorachas, that shines. Af tapia market bakanfeha, and will also be healing from its rays. And there's different ways the Meforshim learn this, but marpet kanfeha really means wings. It's the wings of the sun will heal, right? But it also means, poetically, means rays, that the rays of the sun is going to be healing. Timcha dimim al kol panim. Don't just sit in your pain, wipe off the tears from your face. V'ruach sason tachas ruach kehei timlo es kolev. And the spirit of happiness over the spirit of depression should fill your heart. Dorenu hu dor nifla. Our generation, and is an amazing generation. It's not a low generation, right? Oh, the generation's lower. Hiskatnas hadoros. Rav Kook is explaining aliyas hadoros, right? The generations get higher as we get closer to Geula, not lower. He's going to explain this throughout the Maimer. This is going to be, right? Dorenu hu dor nifla. We have an amazing generation, right? Dor shekula timahon. A generation that is full of wonder, right? I was listening to Yishai Fleischer talk about with some person, I don't remember who he was speaking with, and the person said, what's one of the amazing things about our generation? He said, that's revealed from the war. He said, we think the generation's bums. We think, they're all on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. It's a TikTok generation and this and that. He said, but when it came to fighting Milchamas, Eretz Yisrael, everyone got up. Everyone's like, let's do this. And they show such wonder, such astoundment, right? So on the outside, it looks like the generation is falling apart. But on the inside, what began in Rav Kook's generation, and it's flourishing even more now, is it's an amazing, wondrous generation, not a low generation full of bums. Kasha ma'od limtsoa lo dugma b'chol divrei yamenu. Right? It's impossible to find a generation like this, find something comparable in all the days of our lives. Amazing, right? Again, like we're saying, he's acknowledging the pain, how low, how we don't have the ability to express ourselves. But that's only because we're such a high generation. It's only because we're such an amazing generation. Hu morkiv mehafachim shonim. We are grafted together with opposites, right? Choshech ve'or mishtamshim bo be'arvuvya. Light and darkness, they're working together, right? That's what it says by the creation of the world. It was choshech ve'or, light and darkness, until Hashem separated the light and Hashem separated the darkness, right? That you had both light and darkness. It's like we're so confused, you know? Like, we're both amazing, we're all amazing, but yet we'll all spend who knows how much time staring at YouTube and staring at social media and staring at WhatsApp statuses, but yet we're all amazing, you know? We're mishtamshit, right? You could have amazing people, but also doing horrible things and so confused and dealing with existential crisis and addiction and trauma and everything else, right? So we're the most traumatized generation on one hand. He's saying, look how much pain there is. Look how much darkness there is. Look how much suffering there is. right? Look how all families are all tied up in intergenerational trauma and lack of dignity and loss of worth. And at the same time, we're an amazing high generation. We're the best generation since the beginning of creation, right? There's never been an example like our generation, the Dor HaGeula, in the history of the world. We have opposites. Choshech ve'or mishtamshin ba'arvuvia, both light and darkness working together in confusion. Hu shafel v'yored, we're low, we're down, and we're low. Gam ram v'nisa, but we're also very high. Hu kulo chayev, we are completely guilty, completely chayev, right? Gam kulo zakai, but we're also amazingly innocent. Anachnu chayvim la'amod al apyav laman nucho litzeis le'ezrato, right? We need to stand on our face. We need to stand proud of who we are. Laman nucho litzeis le'ezrato, in order that we can now go out and begin to help ourselves. Right, so over here again we see Rav Kook taking inner leadership on himself, that after he's acknowledging the trauma and acknowledging the pain, he starts to quiet his thoughts and creating that space in order to now take inner leadership and say, our generation is amazing. Our generation, yeah, there's pain, yeah, there's suffering. It's like you could do bad things but still be a tzaddik. You know, you could mess up and do tons of aveiros, but in our generation, you could still be considered a tzaddik, even though you're struggling at every corner, right? Bechol, see, it's like he's transitioning. First, he starts with the pain, and he sits there, and now what he's doing is he is now untangling the pain and the good. So he introduced something good, and he's going to say, we're both, and he's going to talk about how good we are and how bad we are. But then he's also going to say, after that, he's going to sift through and show just how good we are. Right? So it's like if you're following the chain, it goes from pain, it goes to collapse, to starting to get on your feet in order to thriving. Right? So he's taking out us the survival mode. He's showing us how to deal with trauma, the trauma of the generation, and then he's expanding. Right? He's showing us how not to just be in survival mode all day long, right? And okay, b'chol hazmanim u'b'chol hadoros anachnu roim, in all the times, in all the generations, we see b'dor shehu malei pratzot. We see generations filled with boundary breakers. Hapirtzot ovrot al pnei kol chuge hamosvei l'chol stadav, right? And this pritzus, this boundary breaking, this chutzpah, if you will, right? This spreads out on all ethical matters in all its way. Dor shocheach Eloha, hu gam kein dor soro morer, sole v'soveya. A generation that's forgot its Hashem. It's also a generation that's rebellious and goes against the grain. Zolel is like perplexed and low, v'sova. And again, it's another lashon of rebelliousness. Mirosh makdim eis zanach Yisrael et sur mozo. Mirosh mikedem eis zanach Yisrael et sur mozo. From the beginning, at the beginning, we see that they have turned away and ran away from the rock of its salvation, meaning to say Hashem. Hinei me'aver mizeh. We've transgressed. Now he brings a litany of psukim to show how we were sinners. Zovchei adam agalim yishkoum. The fatness of the cows we begin to kiss. V'yitzmedu la'elim, and we brush up against avodah zarah. V'yishkechu el Moshiach, and we forget those that save us. Next page. Ume'ever mizeh, and alongside of this, zanos yayin v'tirosh yikach leiv. We turn towards wine, v'tirosh yikach leiv, and our hearts also take towards this. V'ganav yavo v'pashat gadud b'chutz, and thievery comes and we stick out our hand beyond the fence outside. Po, and here it says, Nashim mevuchos es hatamuz. And the women they cry over hatamuz. That was a avodah zarah at that time. V'sham kol ach ekev Yaakov. That every heel of Yaakov, v'chol ra rachel yehalech, and every evilness comes in our nation. Zehu akava over hu gam al pnei tolada shelanu gam kem begalus. This bowing to avodah zarah and this forgetting Hashem and this not being able to recall our national identity and who we are as actual people, this has been happening the entire galus, right? So you see how he's validating the pain, he's going into the pain, and then he's starting to pull out the good, but he's also turning towards the pain, right? That he's starting to unentangle the Nakudas Tovos, the good points, from the pain itself. It's amazing. It's just, you ever hear anyone write like this? I've never seen this before, right? Muzar hu hador hazeh. Strange is our generation. Muzar hu hador hazeh. This generation, we're such strange beings. Shovev hu, we're wild. Parai hu, we're pariahs. Avalgam nale venisa. But we're also amazing. We're elevated, we're high. Notzi min ha'cheshbon es hayechidim hagasim shelokchu lahem es ruach hapratzin lemasved leolel al yado alilot shel gezo v'chamas v'kol nivla. Of course, we're excluding from the count over here certain thick individuals who have grabbed for themselves the ruach hapratzin, the boundary breakers, as a mask in order to bring about chaos and thievery through their cheshbon. Nimsa gama aver mezeh chutzpah yazgi. We also find that people have tremendous chutzpah. Ein haben misyayish ma'aviv. The kids are not embarrassed in front of their parents. Narim pnei zakim yalbinu. And the children, the youth, they embarrass the faces of their zakenu, of their older ones, of their parents and grandparents. So just to point this out, it's like he's saying, like, the generation's amazing, but there's a few exceptions. Means it's the exact opposite of what people think. The generation is bad, but there's a few great people. Right? There's a few tzaddikim, there's a few people that strive, there's a few people that try to do good, but basically everyone's good. I always joke around, me and my wife always joke around and say, well, if everyone was like us, the world would be an amazing place. It means everyone's bad and there happens to be a few good people, right? Why can't everyone just think and be exactly like me, Then we'd all get along, everything would be perfect, right? Rav Kook is saying the opposite. The generation's amazing and there's a few rotten apples. It's like I was listening to this podcast. This is a podcast I like, trigonometry, with a Constantine and this other guy. One's Jew. They're both totally secular. One's Jewish, the other's not Jewish. And they were interviewing this guy, Dave Smith, who's like a huge, he's Jewish, and he's so pro-Palestinian, and he's so like anti-Israel. And he, this guy had 2 million followers, 3 million followers, talking about people that have a big sphere of influence, and the people of the podcast who are hosting the podcast, they're pro-Israel and they're pro-Jewish, and they have this anti-Israel guy on, and they're talking. It's a great podcast, and I'm listening to this guy, Dave Smith, and it's just like, he's a Jew, and how could he say those things that he's saying? I was listening, I'm like, bro, they're gonna come for you too, man. Like, what don't you realize, So I was thinking, like, this guy's obviously an exception to the rule. Like, everyone's good. Even you have this secular Jew, Constantine, who's sticking up for the Jewish people, is an October 8th Jew, woke up afterwards and he's like, oh my God, what's going on here, And he's like amazing. And his non-Jewish friend is also the other, I forget the other guy's name, He's also sticking up for the Jews. And then you have this one Jew who's tearing the Jews down. And you're like, what the heck is going on here? Like, bro, don't you realize anything? So it's like, the generation is an amazing generation. And there's a few exceptions. You're listening to this guy talk about anti-Israel and how Israel's forcing America to do all sorts of crazy things, And you're like, what? This guy's an exception to the rule, So Rav Kook is saying that everyone in the generation is amazing. And yeah, there's a few exceptions, It's like, he's flipping the whole thing on its head. He's saying, like, you're not low, you're very high. Right? Your kids aren't balei taivas. You're not balei taivas. It's just you're disappointed because you're not getting what it is that you want out of life. So of course you're going to sleep late every day because you're not getting the thing that you want, because you want this amazing light to pair with your amazingly high soul. So that's what he says, right? That chutzpah yazgi ein haben misyavesh mitbayesh ma'aviv. The children, they don't say, it's. My brother always says, it's not kibud avayim, it's kibud baru bain. Right? It's not your kids should respect you. It's how much can you respect your kids? What a generation. What a thing. You have to give and give and give and give to your kids. And then they say, what have you done for me lately? You haven't gotten me anything. You haven't gotten me the phone that I wanted. And you're like, what the heck is going on here, right? I do everything for you. I get you this. I get you that. I'm only there for you. I schlep you to your doctor's appointments, do all sorts of things that I don't want to do. And then you have a taina on me. How can I continue to respect you? What? It's such a crazy thing. That's why all these things like Twisted Parenting, Avi Fishoff and Rabbi Russell, and the relationship approach is now like the approach that it shouldn't be as top down, but it should be more relational, And it's because it's exactly what Rav Kook is saying. This is already happening in his day. When he had the secular Zionists that all came from religious families, they're saying, no, there's something else going on here. We don't want the Torah. We don't want anything like that, right? Because ein haben misbayesh ma'aviv, right? And the younger generation is putting to shame the older generation and saying, no, this is not how it works. There's like a new thing going on here, and we're not going to be okay with the status quo. We're not going to go along with the regular thing. I'm not going to sit in yeshiva 14 hours a day. I'm going to come late every single day. Every single day I'm going to come late, right? So and the parents like, wait a minute, what happened to like classical Judaism? Like, what is going on here? And the kids, it's kibud baru bein, not kibud avayim. Okay, and I want to read. Okay, we'll continue, right? V'le'uma zeh, and in contrast to this, rigshay chesed. Their generation also has kindness, right? There's a chesed organization for everything. Hayosher, straightness, hamishpat ve'echemla olim u'mitgabrim, and compassion and mishpat olim u'mitgabrim. It's getting raised. Hakoach hamadai ve'adieli poretz ve'oleh. The force of science and idealism is poretz ve'oleh. It's like it breaks through and it's elevating. It's like Rav Kook is saying that like. He's going to say, and this is foreshadowing a little bit, like the need in order to teach a Yiddishkeit that is more generally. So he's talking about science over here for a second. He's gonna come back to this in full strength. But the need to teach a Yiddishkeit, a world view of Yiddishkeit that is all encompassing, that brings together Shemayim va'aretz, Ruchnius and Gashmius, that brings together science, that brings together history, that brings together music, that brings together art, right? That brings together dentistry. We have a dentist over here. And to show that even the dentistry is not separate from the Torah, right? It's the tikkun hashin, the tikkun of the shinayim, right? And to show that dentistry, that everything in life is bimechaber. And he's going to say that takes place only in Eretz Yisrael. The ability to unify the two of Shemayim va'aretz, the ability to have perfect orot and kalim, that happens only here in the land of Israel. Now I want to, it's a long paragraph over here, so I want to skip to something else over here, just to bring out this point a little bit. I'm sorry, I didn't make a photocopy of this next thing. And I'm thinking also, maybe we should get like a whole bunch of svarim just to keep here, Like just buy 5 or 6 svarim and keep them here. Okay, so again, just to point this out, like Rav Kook is talking about the elevation of our generation and how to deal with the intergenerational trauma and the inner leadership that one must have with this piece over here. So he's talking about noticing the despair, and then then refusing to let it define who you are, right? I notice the despair, I'm not letting it define me, right? He's saying we're mixed, right? And then shift from the emotional overwhelm to a higher spiritual vision, right? And that's why he's giving this a higher spiritual vision. He's talking about the highness of the generation of the souls. Okay, so Rav Kook writes over here, this is in Orot Tchiyah. Orot HaTchiyah is one of the sections in Orot. Orot has a bunch of sections, but Orot HaTchiyah is it the longest section? It's the longest section in Orot. And this is paragraph Lamed Tet, 39. HaChutzpah shel ikvasid de-meshicha hi muat or l'shem tikun hakelim. The chutzpah, everything we've been saying, of the ikvasid de-meshicha, the heels of the generation of Mashiach. Himuat or, it's a little bit of light, l'shem tikkun hakelim, in order to fix the vessels. Ve'ena doma klal lemeoros shel avaryanud acherim. And this is not similar to different generations where they were just sinning and just doing averus. Shehem hayu lekutot gemurot, that were totally entrenched in this, b'derech harisa, that just wanted to destroy. Amnam yesh nam b'toch hamachana hazeh shel balei chutzpah gam zikin shehem muchrachim lehidaech legamri. But you should know that in this camp of balei chutzpah, in our generation, where the kids embarrass their parents, right? It's like, you work with a kid, the kid has a tattoo, he doesn't have just a regular tattoo. He's got a tattoo that's visible to everyone. And the father's taking his kid to shul, and he's just embarrassed. Just humiliation. Your kid has a tattoo, not just like, covered up on the shoulder. That's pretty bad. You have it in an exposed place. It's just the kid's embarrassing the parents. It's a total tragedy. But Rav Kook is saying, these are not sinners. They're not avaryanim. This chutzpah, to do such a thing, it's not because they're bad. It's because they're high. Right? Amnan, there is in this camp of balei chutzpah, gam zikin shehem muchrachim liyadiach legamri. Right? There are flashes of light, muchrachim liyadiach legamri, that are going to start flashing out, and they're definitely going to come out. V'di'ika zu tavo al yidei ha'ara gedola shel or ha'torah migvura shalmayla. And these flashings of light that are going to come out, they're going to come out from the light of Torah, migvura shalmayla, from a very high place of strength. Al yidei hofat tzadikim gedolim me'od, through the light of great tzadikim, as it says in the pasuk, or tzadikim yismach v'ner rishayim yidaich, right? That the light of tzadikim will be happy, and the ner rishayim yidaich, and the light of the rishayim will be lowered. Below chutzpah de ikvasa de Mashiach, lo haya efshar levaer razei Torah begiloi gamor. Without the chutzpah of the ikvasa de Mashiach, of what we're talking about here, it would not be possible for the secrets of Torah to be completely revealed. Rak al yidei to'avot hargashot she'al yidei hachutzpah. But it happens only through these feelings of chutzpah. Ye'esher lekabel ha'orot sichlias elyona ma'od. The sichliya, this is an amazing thing, right? It's only through this chutzpah that a person has the vessel in order to demand and receive very, very high understandings. V'sof sof hakol yishuv l'tikkun hagamor. And at the end of the day, every last thing is going to come back into the fold, that there's going to be a tikkun. Meaning to say, like, the language of our generation and is not a language of striking fear or intimidation. What's the biggest thing? Connection. What are the words? Everyone wants, not just kids, ourselves. Connection, authenticity, realness. It's a totally different type of vocabulary, right? Something real, something deep, something high, something powerful, something meaningful, right? So the chutzpah, it's a yerida tachlis aliyah, right? It's a yerida l'tzarech aliyah, meaning say the chutzpah of the generation creates the kelim, creates the emotional vessels in order to demand and receive such light. The generation, like Rav Kook is saying, the generation Toveh wants so much more out of life than what we're really giving. And it's this generation that is the most connected to Pnimius HaTorah, the most connected to the Razei HaTorah, the most connected to the secrets of Torah, because the neshamas are so high as we reach the Geula, right? That the generation demands more and more and more. And this manifests itself as chutzpah. Right? That's what he says. Hu miyat ha'or l'shem tikkun hakelim. Right? It's the miyat ha'or. It looks like a yerida, but it's only for the tikkun hakelim, because as the old vessels collapse, like Rav Kook is saying, which started in his generation, fear and intimidation and behavioral charts. Right? It's like, I love the behavioral charts. Like do X, Y, and Z, and then I'll give you a reward in the end. I'll give you the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which they never work, and they usually cause more damage than good, because now you're fighting over whether you did the behavioral chart or not, right? So then you're like, wait a minute, and then like you really want to give the kid a second chance, so you're like, okay, well, we'll consider this time it didn't work, but next time, right? You're up the ante on behavioral charts, right? So the chutzpah, the chutzpah of the generation is only because we demand so much. We demand so much out of life. Is it amazing? Is it amazing how he saw? And keep in mind, Rav Kook said this about the secular Zionists. He was looking at the secular Zionists and he's saying something big is going to happen. This is something big. That all this looks like Yerida, but it's really L'tzarech Aliyah, right? And he's Megala, the Or Pnimi, and he's saying over here, they're not just sinners. They're not just bums. They're not just avaryanim, right? But this is a necessary thing in order to bring out the secrets of Torah, right? And what's one of the secrets of Torah, as he's saying? V'sof shakol yashuv l'tikkun gamor. At the end of the day, everything has a tikkun, right? Every aveira, every tattoo, every krechs, every argument, every frustration, right? Everything that he has described, all the emotional collapse and all the trauma and all the pain and suffering that a person goes through and all the struggles and all the family breakdown and everything that happens, there's going to be a tikkun for everything, right? To see that everything is directly under the Yad Hashem, everything is directly under Hashgacha Pratis, even the collapse, right? And this is a later step in trauma healing, is a life of servitude, a life of giving back to the community, generativity versus stagnation, right? What am I giving back now? Now that I've acknowledged the pain, right? It's like, I keep going back to these just two words over here that we started with. Hasu rayoni, be still my thoughts. It's like that quiet space in the chaos, you know? Like my friend, Dear Pin, he doesn't listen to the shiur, but if he did, he has a song on Spotify, the calm in the chaos, or the quiet in the chaos, you know? It's like finding that inner space of resilience and having a complete reversal, a complete paradigm shift to say, well, our generation, yeah, there's bad things, but there's also amazing things of wanting real connection, moving away from dogma, from pragmatism, moving away from all the things that are just like totally messed up. You know, it's like Rabbi Nachman says in Sichas Haran, it's like you boil a pot of water, and what happens? All the soot comes to the top. And then you have to scoop away all the soot. When a person comes to do tshuva, so everything rises to the top. You know, everything rises to the top. But then, now that it rises to the top, you could go through the pattern of birurim and tikkunim, right? So this generation, everything's rising to the top. Everyone's just vomiting out all the generation's traumas from past years and yesteryears, and it's coming out of our system, but it's only because there's a greater birur that's happening. It's only because there's a greater tikkun that's happening in the world. It's amazing. Okay, we're getting here for today, everyone. Yeah. It's incredible. Great. Questions, comments, letter to the editors? Did it